Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We have the divisional round of the NFL playoffs upcoming. So for 4 games, Saturday and Sunday. But we're going to start with the pre-show and a really significant, sad passing in the world of music yesterday. Russ, start us off.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just go with that. We'll go with David Crosby because, it's funny. Like growing up, I certainly knew about Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I was in that era. I knew about the Kent State song and all that. They weren't like, X got a jug. He's back to having a jug.
Take a boost. Boost.
So I was aware of them, but I remember when I was going to Live Aid, I was really interested in seeing the reunion for Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young because at that point they really weren't together anymore, and it had been a while. I don't remember how many years, but it was a long time. And
it
was at least a decade, probably.
Live Aid was 85, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, they broke up in 74, and he was in jail until like 81. So I think they came out with that album like 82 or 83 with Southern Cross on it.
Right. So, right. So, all right. So, it had been a while. And I remember the excitement when you didn't know when they were coming on. Like they gave you this thing at Live Aid, which was like a guide of when the bands would be on.
Sure.
And I told you I went to the bathroom during U2 because I didn't really know U2 as well. And I was like, they were the least of the bands that I knew at that time.
Right.
But the thing was, they put 4 chairs on the stage. And when they put the 4 chairs on the stage, then everybody knew. Everybody was like, wow. So the anticipation was great. And they were fantastic. I still listen to that performance. I have a couple of others that I like of theirs live. And like I was saying to Mike, Crosby, I don't think gets the credit he deserves for being one of the great singers, even though most of the time he was in a backup, but he had great range.
Yeah. I mean, we were lucky enough to open for them a couple times. I didn't really meet him. I didn't really meet him, unfortunately. I mean, I passed him, in the back areas type things of the, they were the kind of, they were the kind of band that would like show up. They wouldn't even do their own sound check, so I wouldn't see them in their own sound check. But this was with Young. This was with Young. I saw them together. I saw Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I saw them play 3 times when we opened for them 3 times. They were just like, they were kind of backstage, and they would just show up. They'd be like showed up in the middle of our set. Probably they weren't even there before that.
Yeah, I got the impression they probably didn't talk a lot before they went on stage. They liked what they did on stage.
Yeah.
Tell like they didn't all like each other all the time.
Well, that got worse. I after I heard of his passing, I watched a documentary that Cameron Crowe directed about 5 years ago, and apparently on one of the last tours that he and Nash did, Nash would not even look in his direction. So the things were starting to fall apart. I mean, let me just go back though. It was unbelievable with the Birds, innovator. Other than the Beatles, one of the first electric bands.
We should tell people the real young ones. That's like the 60s.
We're talking 65, 64, 65, 66.
Right. He was a great writer. I mean, he was probably the best writer. I mean, Neil Young, but him and Neil Young, I felt were the best writers.
Yeah, I love Graham Nash too, but they're all great. But
yeah,
he was in the Birds. Apparently his issue, even after post drugs, and he had a lot of drug problems, was sort of interpersonal relations in the band. He was somebody who had a filter. He would say anything that he wanted to say, and that got him kicked out of the Birds. But then he meets up with Stills and Nash at and the funny thing is, they don't remember where they met in terms of, like, one guy says it was at Joni Mitchell's house. The other one says it was at Mama Cass's house.
They were all probably high. That's why they don't.
They probably, but also they were all in bands. Like they were all in different bands. So, I mean, the weird thing about that band when they came together was, it was kind of
Stills and Young were in Buffalo Springfield, and Nash was in Hollies.
So it kind of felt a little bit like Asia-ish, for that time.
It was definitely a super group, no doubt.
It was a super group they put together, and for that time, but they, obviously stayed together for a very long time.
My feeling on the whole group is a lot of it got blamed on Neil, but I think Graham Nash turned out to be the biggest diva, if you ask me.
Well, we're talking about and for those who don't know, David Crosby alienated himself from the band about 8 or 9 years ago when Neil Young left his wife and took up with Daryl Hannah, the actress Daryl Hannah, who was a longtime girlfriend of Jackson Brown, who was also a friend of theirs. So David Crosby said something publicly about that. That got Neil Young pissed off at him. And then Graham Nash, who apparently at that time was also divorcing his wife and trading in on a younger model, so to speak, that got him pissed off. And now I saw an interview with David Crosby last year with on Howard Stern, where he was talking to Steven Stills, but he was still not talking with Graham Nash and Neil Young. And while the documentary was on, that was 5 years ago, he basically said, nobody who I made music with, Joni, Neil Young, Graham Nash, Steven Stills, Roger McGuinn, all of them are not talking to me. So, I mean, he made peace with it because he said it on Stern, and the thing was, like, he started playing with other musicians, Sarah Jarosz, who I really love. That's how I discovered. That's how I discovered her, was through David Crosby on Twitter, and I actually had an interaction with him on Twitter, which, it's a mention, or it was a response to a question, and he responded back. I mean, that was a thrill.
I discovered Sarah Jarosz by the fact
that
Mike and I share a YouTube page, and so Mike's, a lot of her things would come up as recommendation things on our Ekman site. So I like her a lot. We got into it.
She's fantastic, and apparently she just recorded something with him 3 days ago, like last weekend.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really sad. I mean, you have to say this, Kev. They were talking about David Crosby passing away. I mean, with all the issues that he had, with the massive drug use, with the financial problems that he had, with going to jail, with getting clean, diabetes, hepatitis C, he had a liver transplant that Phil Collins paid for. All this thing, he lived to 81 years old. And arguably, I mean, he's on that sort of pantheon of rock and roll in terms of, like, top 10, top 20. I mean, he's one of the founding members.
Yeah, he's a name to be sure. And it's a tough loss for the music world, although I don't think it was unexpected, as you just went through the list of ailments and his age and so forth. Although, I hadn't read much about him in over the last several months.
Yeah.
The other thing about that crowd that was kind of strange, and I got the sense even when we played with them for a little bit, was that there was the music industry is set up into different kinds of places. There's a New York music industry. There's like a Nashville music industry. There's an LA music industry. The LA music industry, like with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Brown, the Eagles, like they all were very much part of they all kind of intertwined with each other. Well,
there's a documentary, and I haven't seen it yet, but there was a documentary that was on Showtime or one of the cable channels. They all lived in Laurel Canyon in outside of Los Angeles. All of them. I mean, Joni and Jackson Brown and
they all did. And there's a different
vibe.
The music industry. Like I was more, closer, I guess, to the New York music world. And there's definitely an attitude that the rest of the music world has about the LA music world, just like people we have about, So that was always kind of funny, and I think there are people that definitely didn't like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, at least that I would meet because of that. They were like they're a super band put together in Hollywood.
Well, I also think this, Ak, and this is weird. Like, I like music based on music. If in terms of like somebody is political, I don't care. It's like if their politics don't agree with mine, fine. Like David Crosby was a tree-hugging environmentalist, a left-wing liberal who hated Republicans. I couldn't care less. He was unbelievably talented. He was fantastic. You sort of have to separate, politics and music. Otherwise, if you're a Republican or a conservative, the only guy you're listening to is Toby Keith. So I mean,
the Oakland boys, Mike.
Right. Well, yeah, there you go. But what I'm just saying is he was an immense talent. I mean, obviously he realized that he was difficult because of all the things that he went through, and at the end he was alienated from a lot of the people he made music with. But it doesn't take away from the fact that he was a fantastic performer.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I don't think you won't be able to replicate a band like that again.
Yeah.
Well, because a lot of the music was written about social causes, like you said, Mike.
That's true.
A lot of pop music isn't based on that anymore. And all these guys were great in their own way at certain things, and it all meshed together. It's really hard to put together a band like that.
No, yeah, and I mean, nowadays with technology, you can record something and put it on YouTube, and it can explode in a minute. The story of the song Ohio, Crosby and Neil Young were up in Northern California, saw what happened at Kent State, wrote the song quickly, booked a studio in Southern California, went down, recorded it, and because Ahmet Ertegun, the head of Atlantic Records, knew that the social significance of this, it was out as a single in 10 days, which was unheard of. And that could be one of the greatest political songs ever recorded.
Yeah, no, I mean, this stuff does happen still, but the difference between back then and now is, that there were so few bands. Like there's great stories going on with bands now that no one knows about, but when you only have when you have a 20 or so super bands versus 10,000 bands like you have now,
right?
You follow what's happening, but there's some incredible stories about how people getting out songs quickly. There's some incredible harmony bands out there that are just so I don't think to say it couldn't happen again. It couldn't happen again on that scale because there are so many bands that can.
Well, that's what I'm saying on that scale,
and because record companies don't really exist anymore, so it's back then, a record company could push that thing through.
I mean, if you had a No Nukes concert now, who would actually show?
A lot.
Greta Thunberg.
There's a lot of people that would. I don't know. Anyway, Kevin, thoughts? Anyway?
Well, I'm just going to bring. I was just thinking of what Mike was talking about this very few conservatives. Actually, I think there's more than you'd think. I mean, right off the bat, Ted Nugent, Simmons, Kid Rock, Clarkson. There's a lot of pretty strong Republicans out there that are making music. So
let's just say I think they're sort of small R Republicans where they don't. I mean, Nugent is an idiot. Gene Simmons doesn't care what people think about him. But it's like there may be a lot more, but they don't talk about it because I think there's a stigma and people,
But Nugent talks about it.
Kid Rock talks about it.
Yeah.
I live in Michigan, so
Nugent, he does not hide it. I interviewed Gene Simmons. He does not hide it.
I will tell you that Chris Chelios's rule in his house that politics cannot be discussed occurred because Chris Rock and I'm drawing a complete blank. Northwest band hockey.
Pearl Jam.
Who's the guy?
Eddie Vedder.
Eddie Vedder and Kid Rock got into it at his house in Malibu, Chelios's.
Yeah.
And I guess it was really a heated argument, and Chelios raised his hands as only Chelios can and said, "That's it. Politics never be discussed ever in my house." And Chelios, I did his book with him. He's very much apolitical, and that word you throw around, that people, but he really is he just doesn't engage. He doesn't have. I don't think he votes. I don't think he pays attention to what's going on with politics. He just thinks they're all bad. Is essentially what he said. So.
There you go. They are all bad. And remember what we learned from this most today. Remember, Mike hates trees and the environment. All right, here we go. Let's start the show.
I already knew that.
Yeah. But if you don't know it, now you know. Mike hates trees and the environment. Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, January 20th, 2023.
I'm Michael Agello, and Eck is slandering me. I love The Trees by Rush. That's a great song.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, and I just learned here, of course I didn't know this, that Elvis Presley was a registered Republican.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
And I'm Eklund, and a lot of people with a lot of money are Republicans.
yeah.
You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where you can hear Mike quote say, "I like him even though he's a tree hugger and is for the environment." And so here we go. I want to start today with something that's going to be a little controversial, probably, but being in the rumor game for as long as I've been in the rumor game, and having had every agent out there try to use me in one way, shape, or form at some point. Some quietly, some admittedly, like just saying, yeah, could you put this out there for my guy because and I don't do that kind of stuff. It's very interesting the Horvat stuff that came through yesterday. I'm not going to mention names or anything like that. You guys can figure them out if you want to yourself. But and I'm not saying who's bad or good reporter, but what I'm going to say is this. Horvat and the Canucks are definitely trying to work out a deal. And this has been coming out, it came out yesterday. They've been working on it for a couple of days. And it's actually, and I do believe that. I checked somebody in Vancouver that, guy I really love out there. He's a really good guy who's got a long time radio show. He used to be a writer for us on HockeyBuzz. Anyway, he said, they've been recently, since like the Rutherford thing, basically, they've been talking about trying to get something done. And then yesterday it comes out that one of the reporters says, well, there's a team out there, or multiple teams out there that are willing to pay Horvat $9 million a year coming up in the future. And it might be true. It might be that Horvat, I think that, it's one of these interesting things. Like,
I nominate my team in Detroit. So
you think they would pay $9 million Horvat?
Yeah, I think they would, given their circumstances, given what the market is right now.
Yeah, they might. I mean,
like P.T. Barnum used to say.
I mean, I don't know that, but
yeah,
why wouldn't they? That would expedite their rebuild. It wouldn't totally destroy like their salary cap situation. And it would really springboard them. So
yeah, but are you making him the 1C or the 2C?
He would be the 1C.
Because that could cause some friction.
Well,
yeah, I mean. Now, what is Larkin going to get if that's the case?
Well, I mean, right now we don't even know if they're going to get him signed. I mean, I assume they will. But
pretty much,
I mean, they don't. You can, we all know you can have 4 or 5 players making big money, especially if it's true that we're going to.
Mike says you can't, but you can.
No, yeah, you can.
And win.
They have to be good
and win.
Yeah, you can win. I mean, the certainly the Tampa Bay Lightning have proven that.
Yeah.
But the one of the issues is, and look, if you think giving Horvat is $9 million is overpaying, then the argument would be what I call, or at least I guess we could call it what the Florida Panthers used to say, which was, you got to overpay to get them to come to Florida, or you got to get them overpaid to come in. Right now, you got to overpay to get them to come to Detroit because the team hasn't made the playoffs 6 years. So I would say they would give him $9 million.
Don't you think, Kev, that there's a little bit of like a concern that this is like Rutherford said, we want to pay him what he's worth, but he's going to be negotiating on what he's doing now, which is a career year for him.
Yeah. But, plus, I mean, the argument with Horvat is the same one that's going on in Detroit, except we don't have Larkin doesn't have 30 goals right now.
Right.
But, you're paying him for leadership. You're paying him for being an all-around player.
Right.
You're paying him for being a popular player within the community. Right. So how much is that worth? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're willing to give – we've seen a lot of guys – like Matthew Boldy hasn't proven anything, and he got $7 million.
Yeah, you're paying on potential.
Yeah,
potential's not what we're paying on here. We're paying on Horvat's career year. Potential is not. This is not potential.
Yeah, but he's still only 27?
27. My issue with Horvat is he has in the last few years become less of a playmaker and more of a scorer, and that isn't always sustainable.
Hasn't he always been that though?
No, he used to be.
I've always seen him as a scoring center.
Let me.
He scored some numbers. He got 20 goals, but he can't even get 30 assists anymore. He was.
Yeah, but sometimes that's happenstance. If your shot's going in all the time, you're not getting rebound assists.
This is over the course of 3 years now.
He scored 20 goals or more 4 straight seasons, 19 in the shortened year. the last 2 years, 31 and 30, and he's scored more goals than assists. So he's turned into more of a shooting center.
He's a $7 million like a $7.5.
Oh, easy.
Player,
right?
$8 million.
I think he's at least an $8 million.
Okay, let's call him an $8 million player. And listen, I'm not saying he won't get it at all. And I'm not
striking while the iron is hot. That's what you do.
Yeah, but with the current salary cap situation, you're right that if somebody like has enough space, like New Jersey will overpay. New Jersey will overpay for people. Columbus might overpay for people. They did maybe that if they have enough space, yes, that's possible, right? But at the end of the day, I don't think it's wise, and two, I don't think anyone really knows right now. Like to sit back and say there's another team out there that's willing to pay $9 million for him right now, I think is a little bit early to make that call.
Let's say Kevin's right, and Detroit is that team. They've got to get Larkin signed first because you can't sign Horvat first at 9 and then expect Larkin to take the 8.
I mean, you have teams out. You have teams out there like, okay, for example, St. Louis is going to have $15 million in cap space opening up because now they have spent a ton of money signing Kyrou and signing Thomas, but you're going to have $15 million dropping off the payroll with O'Reilly and Tarasenko's deals expiring. They could be in. I mean, they need a number 2. He's a better number 2 center than a number 1 center. And if Robert Thomas is your number 1, it's sort of like a Leaf situation where, you're going to pay more for your number 2, getting him in free agency with Tavares at $11 million than you were paying Matthews before he signed the new deal. So he's going to make money. But he's going to make more money if he goes someplace like a Columbus that needs.
Well, sure, because some place that has cap, and those places are the places that have cap space.
Well, and there's another factor that we're not discussing. My thought that the Red Wings might be willing to give him $9 million is based on the fact that they would be doing it in the off season. They could only give him a 7-year deal, so. And that makes a big difference because I think it's, we've talked about this before where over the last few years, it's become about the final number. I got 64 million. I got 56 million. Right. Yeah. So I think
he's been stressing winning for the last few weeks when they've interviewed him. And there's big quotes out there about him talking about winning. So I can't see him going to Columbus.
No.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're they're farther away than.
If he gets $2 million more than a year than anywhere else, he might. But
the agent gets 3% out of that. The government's getting 50% out of it. So, you're down. You're only getting $2 million is.
Now he might buy into Detroit because in a year or two they could be that team,
or New Jersey, or someplace like that.
But he's not going to go to a bottom feeder.
All right, so let's just say for a second that he might be able to get it, and that's a discussion. That's not really where I was going with this. Where I was going with this more was along the lines of what team would tell you right now, Kevin, that there would be. Would you think a team like a general manager would ever tell you right now? No, right. So this obviously is coming from the agent. The agent believes that there's a team out there that says. Right. That's where the story would happen.
Yeah, or from players, that kind of thing.
But the players wouldn't know if a team was willing to do it. The agent, but so whenever a team's negotiating with a player currently, and then suddenly a story comes out that there's a team out there willing to pay a lot more, you have to be a little bit suspect of it, in my mind. Like you have to be a little bit like the agent has a goal, has an agenda here, right? There's no question about it. Like the agent wants to make Vancouver sweat this a little bit if they are negotiating.
Well, I mean,
but does it matter?
Yeah,
I'm just asking.
His job.
It only matters to me because this is what I do a lot. But it does matter because I've been put in this situation before, and I've called people out on it. And I'm like, I'm not going to report that because that's an obvious. I'm not going to report that because it's obvious that what you're trying to do here. You're trying.
Yeah, but let me throw this out there.
Yeah, that's his job.
The two general managers that we've talked about today, Yzerman and Rutherford, neither one of those guys care about that rumor.
Right.
I'm absolutely confident.
Right. Of course, but there is the Twitterverse and the public opinion stuff, and I'm not saying that it matters a lot, but it does. But you can't tell me that it doesn't matter at all. Like
to the agent, it doesn't matter at all. But the agent.
No, that's what the agent.
Not to the team, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, his agent.
I
His
mean,
agent.
what you know?
I mean, listen. In the end of the day, is it going to change things? No, probably not. But the team does care and does monitor what people are saying on social media.
Well, they do because they're interested. But
And also
anyway, like I do think that you can never rule out guys will resign. I mean, Forsberg. Just think of last year at this time.
Yeah.
Wow, what a horrible decision Poyle made, and we got to the end, and there he is. Still a predator.
We Forsberg had a better chance of re-signing than Horvat because, again, they're going to have to do 2 or 3 things to keep Horvat. That's the difference.
Well, I mean, I agree with that, but that doesn't mean it can't happen. So,
sure.
If they sign Horvat, then automatically Kuzmenko is gone, and Kuzmenko is scoring at a point per game pace. But it's a question of whether you want to pay Kuzmenko $5 or $6 million, which he supposedly is asking for. But this is the thing. Pat Morris is his agent, Newport Sports.
Right.
That's a pretty established agency. So I mean,
he's not the only person that is talking from Newport Sports to people.
Sure, Don Meehan does as well.
But not just that. Not even the big. Remember, all these people have sub agents and different people like that. There's all these. The rumors very rarely are going to come from Pat Morris.
But I'll tell you what got screwed up in all this. They were supposed to trade JT Miller and re-sign Bo Horvat, and they did the opposite. And I still don't know why they did the opposite.
Apparently, the talk was, Russ. I heard this. I think it was Elliot Friedman that reported this. That in July, when we were at the draft, essentially the agent for Horvat was sort of playing hard to get. They wanted to get it nailed down because they wanted to trade Miller at the draft or around the draft. Now it strung along until later in the summer because Miller, I don't think, was signed until September. But at that point, they were saying, okay, we can't nail them down, so why don't we try the other? And they got Miller, and they overpaid for Miller. Miller got overpaid.
That's standard operating procedure. When you got 2 guys, the guy that's easiest to sign gets signed.
But here's the other thing about that. There is a little bit more to
months
that
and months later, and they still can't sign them. So
there's something more to that, and that is the fact that I've heard many times in Rutherford. So I heard this just this year, but I'm sure Rutherford knew this. If it was the case, he knew this when he was making, or whoever was making the signing at that time of JT Miller, that this is a divided locker room, and that there's Miller is more towards the Elias Pettersson world. Where Horvat and Bester are on the other side. So if you're gonna, you're keeping Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and those guys, JT Miller might be the one who fits most with those guys, the way they want to play versus the way there's other. So to me, the biggest problem is what's driving people crazy. What I keep hearing is their captain is like in a different page than their star.
Right.
So when you're looking at that, that's like
you can see that.
You can see it clearly, and I think that's why Rutherford is so frustrated because he knows they all have talent. That's why Rutherford's willing to trade these guys because he just can't get them.
Well, I mean, please, this is a dysfunctional soup in Vancouver right now because on top of all this that we're talking about, we've got essentially Bruce Boudreau being walked to the gallows. And Rick Tocchet, we don't know, they're supposedly talking to Tocchet. Tockett's denying it on the TV broadcast, but there's all talk that, he's going to take over either now or after the All-Star break. I mean, this is just it's a cluster is what it is. It really is a cluster.
No, it is. But
it's a terrible business.
There you go, Kevin. I mean, that's what it is. Like, that's
just a terrible business. I mean,
it is.
They're really treating him poorly, Bruce Boudreau.
And he's a well-liked guy.
Let me throw this. This is my solution to this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who knows? There's probably 100 reasons why they wouldn't do this. But if I was king for a day in Vancouver, I would trade Brock Besser because he has 3 years. He's a very attractive contract at 6 and change.
Yeah.
He's easily tradable. In my opinion, because he's got that short contract. He's producing, he's got some, not been the player that everyone hoped he would, but, he gives you, he gives you something, you're going to get something out of that deal. Right. And you'll get something out of it. If you're Vancouver, you'll get players back. Right. Then you clear up your cap space and you can sign Horvat because as much as, you would like to have both of them, I think you'd rather have Horvat. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
I
I
think
don't think the
that's-
Islanders would take.
Miller?
No,
Besser.
Oh, Besser. Yeah.
Besser.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
I don't know.
Minnesota would take him
I
too if they
can't say
could. But
definitively because Besser is not particularly great away from the puck. So I don't know if Lane Lambert. Now, could they use his scoring? Of course, but I don't know if they want to put up with the other part of his game.
Yeah.
It is lacking.
I think a team like Minnesota, I mean, obviously the ties of Besser, but a team that I think needs an infusion of an additional offense, that would be a fit. But again, Rutherford's talking the game that I'm not going to trade Horvat for picks. I'm going to trade him for somebody who
He's got a month, so
Right.
he's running out of runway.
And then we talked about this on Wednesday. I don't know how you pull off a deal, a rental for somebody who's got term, unless that team wants to trade somebody with term, a player that they don't want anymore. And that's tough because you're that it's not a crap for crap deal. It's it's a rental for crap deal. And I'm just using that as an aspersion. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
well, let's say this for a second. Last night, very early in this time of year for this kind of stuff to happen. For what, and that probably it could be totally drawn away as coincidence. I saw some people saying, well, that's just because of this, just because of that. Nothing was definitive though on anything. I didn't think. But Matt Dumba scratched, and Jesse Pujarvi scratched. All right, so both of these players, it feels like they're going to continue their careers elsewhere. But I don't think Minnesota's going to. I think Minnesota's looking at Matt Dumba as an own rental and they're going to keep him.
They are. I mean, Garen said it plainly on radio 2 days ago.
But then
I thought the phrasing of that was one that he had done something to offend the gods.
Yes.
The phrasing was not, we sat him out because we were going to trade him. The phrasing was he knows why he's sitting. That was how it was phrased. Now, when you say that, I mean, did he said something? He
he could have said something out of frustration.
I mean, Matt Bobby walks into the dressing room and says, "Hey, I guess we're going to keep one man around here."
You might be right, Ek.
Yeah. Well, no, but you are right, Ek, that both these guys, are on the you won't be with us next year list. So so
that's
they would trade this year at the deadline for sure.
But I think, Minnesota really has a shot, I think they think, and that they wouldn't trade one of their top 4 defensemen.
Unless they get something back that helps them equally as much as Dumba. And that,
obviously,
but he talked about the dead cap and stuff, and Bayer's trying to strike this year, knowing that next year is going to be near impossible.
Right, and they don't have a whole lot of people that come off.
It's already Russ. This year, the dead money is 12. Next year, the dead money is 14. Either way, they're dead in terms of...
No, but this year is where they actually have a chance because of where they're positioned and how they're playing. That's the point. And that's the impression I got when I listened to the interview in Garen, was that they're trying to seize that because they see it probably won't be there next year, where this year it's there, like they have a chance.
And for them to trade with Edmonton, just for the hell of it, these players swapping places. And I mean, it wouldn't be that correct. There would have to be more coming from Edmonton in that trade. But why would you trade with Edmonton if you're?
Well, first of all, right now it's almost impossible that deal gets done because they had to move things around just to get Evander Kane off of LTI.
Right.
So they would have to include a lot more than just Puljujärvi making. I think he's in the 2s to clear enough room to have Dumba at $6 million. And I don't think Bill Guerin is retaining salary. So unless you're including Kaylor Yamamoto or somebody like that.
Yeah,
I don't know how they do it.
So the other, so you have that going on, and you have Vancouver, of course, involved. Like, could Besser go for Dumba? Is that a trade that makes sense for both sides?
That makes more sense money wise.
Makes more sense money wise.
Only if Vancouver can talk to Dumba's agent and get him to sign. If not,
again, Minnesota doesn't have a replacement on defense. They're not going to do it.
I'll give him.
Well, plus, I mean, they. Rutherford say, you got to give me more back than Dumba because I may lose Dumba. So
right.
Yeah. So
and the other rumor that comes out yesterday, that's been thrown around by a couple people is the Erik Karlsson asking price is 3 first-round draft picks and that they will retain $18 magical percentage points.
Okay.
Nobody's doing it.
Yeah, that's
whoever
an old rumor that was since been disputed. So.
Right.
Whoever reported that
recruited yesterday.
whoever reported that is on psychedelic mushrooms, because you're not getting 3 first round you're not getting 3 first round picks for a guy who's 11-5 for 4 more years,
Right.
who could step on a banana peel and tear his ACL.
Yeah, well, the rumor was never that they were going to get that. The rumor was that's what San Jose wanted. So that's completely different than what you're talking about. But anyway, that wasn't true either. And I say that because I read Greer met with the media and said basically, that's not true. So I mean,
that's reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense at all. I mean, although it is hard to,
but I don't know. I mean, I saw somebody wrote, and I wish I could remember who it was now, but somebody wrote that he could see Karlsson getting traded, but next off season.
Pierre LeBrun wrote that.
Is that what it was? Yeah. Then you can work out things, you can move people, you can play with the salary a little bit, and then it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but
he's not in a rush to be traded. He does like it there. I know that for a fact.
And Greer seemed to say that he wasn't in a rush to trade him either. So, I mean, you do have to, as much as we never want to pay attention to things like marketing and such, when you've got a guy like Karlsson who suddenly is Karlsson again, and your team isn't very good, and you're still trying to fill seats, you still have your president saying to you, I still got to sell season tickets.
Right. Plus, they're going to lose Timo Meier, and you lose both those guys.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
He
also, by the way, he also said that he, essentially, I've been reading that I'm getting rid of Timo Meier, and maybe not. I mean, he didn't phrase it like that.
No, but I think that's where I think he's becoming GM-ish, where he's not really being.
I was going to say the same thing, Russ. It's always funny to watch a player shift to the GM mentality, like how they're going to do it. Like, some of them do it, and Billy Guerin was too honest for a while. Like, Guerin would be really honest.
Well, I have a little game. I have a little game that we can play at the end of the show.
I got one more rumor, and then let's play.
Right. No, but let me just. I wanted to interject something before we get to one more rumor. Is the Ryan Miller last night in Buffalo, and I wrote something about Miller that he's the second best goalie in Sabres history behind Dominic Hasek, which I think most goaltenders would be behind Dominic Hasek.
Oh, yeah.
But if you look at the history of the Sabres, I mean their history in terms of goaltenders. Tom Barrasso was gone after 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
Donnie Edwards had a couple good years in the late 70s. Roger Crozier came from Detroit and established the Sabres and got to a Stanley Cup final in 75. Right. Their history in terms of goaltenders is not rich.
Yeah.
So Miller, but Miller is, Kev, he's somebody held in extremely high regard in USA Hockey. Obviously, what he did in Vancouver in 2010, and Don Granato talked about it. I mean, he's not a Hall of Famer. I don't think he's ever going to be a Hall of Famer, but he was a great goaltender.
Yeah, no question. And he is a U.S. Hockey Hall of Famer, and first ballot guy. Like he's a no questions asked Hall of Famer in that regard. And it was interesting. I watched the NHL Network's presentation of that, and they had Dubnyk on there, and his portrayal of Miller in 2010 in this performance kind of shocked me a little bit. He's basically said that's when we were all aware that the Americans had a lot going on, and I'm thinking you didn't know till 2010 that I think we sort of knew before then.
It's such a friggin'
I think that's in his own world.
But I don't want to criticize him because he is darn funny. I don't know if anybody.
He's a good guy.
It cuts to my core, that kind of statement, because it's like because you know what I'm saying, Kevin. It's like, come on. Like,
maybe out of sight, out of mind, because Dubnyk was playing at that time. But Ryan Miller made 2 consecutive Eastern Conference Finals in 06 and 07. I think anybody who knows hockey knew he was one of the best goalies in the league, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, but he was talking about the American program.
Mike, it's on the seventh day. Canada created hockey. That's what it is. It's like, and that
and you left out Bob Sauvé, Mike. I remember him too.
Yeah.
He
had a cup of coffee in Detroit as well. So
yeah,
before you get going, we got to talk about this real quick, just because last year we talked a lot about, obviously, Ron Francis's draft didn't live up to expectations, and they were at that point trying to live up to the standard of the new NHL expansion teams, who the first one in the modern era, if we can call where we're at now the modern era, got to the Stanley Cup final, and of course they were 30th out of 32 teams. Right. But last night, the Seattle Kraken moved past, at least by percentage points, the Vegas Golden Knights, and they're now first in the Pacific Division. And when you consider that Vegas Golden Knights team started 13-2, and I wrote on that this morning, so I looked it up, and they're 14-15-2
right
since that 13-2 start. Meanwhile, the Seattle Kraken are the 7th best team in the league in terms of winning.
I'm giving the Jack Adams to Dave Hackstall. I am.
So
I
didn't know you had a vote, but
no, I don't.
Yeah. So,
but I mean,
I think the broadcasters will as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's going to be Montgomery, but historically they really favor the point change.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, Montgomery's done a great job.
For sure.
I do. Don't you think though? With the coach of the year, we always tend to ignore like the top teams, like
Yeah,
it's like we don't want to say those guys did a good job because they had good players.
We do, but Boston was a wild card team last year, and now they're going to win the President's Trophy. So the jump from where they were,
they had just win the President's Trophy. They're going to have one of the best numbers in NHL history.
They had 100 points last year, and they're probably right now they're on a pace for 140. So if it's a 40-point jump, is pretty. It
is 40, but I think Seattle will be better than that.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing about it, too, is you have Matty Beniers, who's leading the team in scoring, probably going to win the Calder or at least be in that conversation. And there's not that many rookies that lead a team in scoring that are in first place, too.
It's true.
No, it's impressive. There. And, big overtime win last night against a very good New Jersey team.
Yeah.
And they're doing it mainly on the backs of Martin Jones.
Yeah, that part I can't get.
I don't know. I don't think they're a goalie team. Do you think they're a goalie team?
No,
I don't either. I think they're a team that's winning with their goalie, but not because of their goalie.
Right. They're winning on scoring, and because
they're third in the league in goals.
His save percentage is under 900, so it's not like he's lighting it up.
But that's not going to work in the playoffs, obviously.
No.
Well, but I don't know about you, but I won't be picking Seattle to go all the way in the playoffs.
Right. I mean, when we looked at Vegas, we're like, well, maybe they could. I mean, that's the difference between the two of them. That was,
did we think that though, or did we think, the balloon is going to fall?
We would all sit there and say that Mark Fleury has the ability to get hot. He could get hot, and he could be like, that. He was the kind of
nobody picked him. Nobody picked him in 2018.
Nobody picked him, but I'm just saying that there felt like there was more of a slight possibility. I mean,
we had more belief in them than we should have,
right?
But I don't think that we were saying they're going to go to the final. So
it felt more this Seattle team is very different than that Vegas team. But that Vegas team did have more of like a magic air around them.
Yeah.
Where the Seattle team is very businesslike in what it does.
And Jared McCann has lived up to potential, and I think that's something that Pittsburgh kind of blew it on.
Yeah, you know what? He's hard to get off the puck. Like you watch him play, and he'll take the puck
around.
Like
in the juniors, he was a very good player, and I didn't understand. And I'm sure something happened. Why early in his career they all were just like, I don't know about this guy. Meanwhile, this is the potential that he always had.
Russ, one more quick rumor because we're running out of time, but
Well, don't forget Mike's got some stuff too. So
right, real quick. Monahan, Pierre LeBrun reporting that Colorado has interest in Sean Monahan. That's
a fallback.
That makes a ton of sense, and in my brief follow up today, a couple people told me that was definitely the case.
that's a fallback in case they can't get Horvat or can't get O'Reilly or can't get one of the but and it's not a bad fallback because he's hurt right now. He's been hurt since early.
He's always hurt. That's the problem.
That is right. He's always hurt. All right, Mike, go ahead. What do you got?
No, Russ just wanted us to show the All-Star.
Those are the All-Star jerseys that we just saw.
There is a little bit of a brewing controversy that Greg Wyshynski reported regarding apparently there is some talk of the All-Star voting being skewed because of the fan voting, and Barkov did not make the All-Star team, whereas Austin Matthews did. And I'm like, because there are about 6 fans in Florida, and there are about
Isn't All-Star voting always skewed because of fan voting? Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
I hate All-Star voting online. I'm not a big fan of it. Like, I do think that I miss the days of punching out little holes.
Oh yeah, that used to be the best.
The problem with that is
you handed them in.
It was the same deal then. Like, people would get boxes of these and set them out.
Oh yeah.
We grab them. We walk around the spectrum, finding them and grab them, and then poke through all of the holes at the same time.
Yeah, no. In Buffalo, they used to give out like about this thick in terms of the cards, and they used to encourage people. Okay, make sure before you leave at the end of the day you put them in the box.
Yeah, but I'll be honest. Like, as an example with the Mets, like if they had Ken Boswell on there, I wasn't voting for him as an All-Star. I didn't care if he was a Met. Like, I couldn't. There were some guys I could not draw the line, go over the line for. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame that Barkov's not going for sure because that is his talent.
Listen, there's a bunch
somebody will get injured and then he'll be.
I think that's a good bet, Mike. I think you're right about that.
Or somebody will be sick and
everybody's saying that about Connecting too. He's deserving too. There's gonna be like 4 or 5 guys that just.
But it's not even Philly press.
Well, you're gonna be stunned at me saying this, but I actually think William Nylander is more deserving of the All-Star berth if it's an extra berth than Matthews. Matthews has only started to score in the last I'd say 2 weeks, and Nylander has been consistent throughout. But this is the same thing that happened last year. He dropped off after the first half and had a bad second half. But first half he was worthy of the All-Star.
Yeah, you're probably right. But although, you've got to always pay homage to what the All-Star game is about.
Right.
Which is, like having, there's always a zillion kids there, and they'd rather see Ovechkin and Crosby.
Like, Mom, we're gonna go see Nylander.
Right.
Okay. Here are the rules. Here are the rules to my game. Similar to the rumor chart where Eck has percentages.
Right.
We're going to use percent, not for specific teams. And I've assembled a list of 12 players, UFA guys who are UFAs, and a few that have term remaining. It is not. It is percentage of them being traded before March the 3rd, not where, but if. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start with John Klingberg, Anaheim defenseman, making $7 million. He has a modified no trade after January 1st. So he has a little protection, but he pretty much goes where Anaheim wants to send him. Kev, what's your
80%?
80%. Russ?
90%.
Eck?
100%.
I agree, 100%. They didn't sign him if they weren't. The only thing that prevents it is injury, and we'll say that.
Well, that's why I went 80%, and the fact that it's hard to move $7 million. And
that's why I went 90 because of the salary.
But they can hold money back.
Anaheim can eat money, and they don't have any salary retention. So I think a $3.5 million defenseman at the deadline who's be a power play quarterback is pretty enticing.
He'll find a home. Okay,
Ryan O'Reilly, UFA. $7.5 million salary. He's out until mid-February with a broken foot. Eck?
55%.
Russ?
50.
25. I don't think he's going to be traded.
Yeah. Well, it's only and that's factoring in if St. Louis is still in the race. And if they're still in the race, then the percentages drop.
It changes. It's totally different.
I'm predicting they'll be close enough that they won't trade him. So
right. Yeah. The only thing here is, and I keep going back
to about that, Kevin. They have done this before. Like,
Yeah,
but
Paul Scott.
that's one team that does this. Like Shattenkirk, remember he was they were in the playoff run, and
Yeah, it'll depend on what the deal is.
They'll move him. They were in the playoffs and they traded Shattenkirk.
Yeah, no,
Paul Stastny too. They were 1 or 2 points out and they traded him. Okay, Scott Mayfield, low salary. I believe it's under $2 million. UFA at the end of the year. And I'll go first. My thing is the Islanders are going to be in the race, so I don't think Lou will trade him. So I'd say about 10%. Ack?
I gotta go a second. All right, let's see.
Who are we talking about just now?
Scott Mayfield, defenseman Islanders.
Yeah, like 5%. I don't think they're gonna trade him.
Russ?
0%.
0 for me as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I thought the odds are low. I don't think the Islanders are dropping out of the race, and I can't see them trading like a stay-at-home defenseman. Okay, Erik Karlsson, 4 years remaining at $11.5 million. Now, this is before March the 3rd, not period, but before March the 3rd.
Yes.
29%.
I like that.
Yeah.
I do a lot. I'm going 10%.
Ack?
It's like the winning bid without going over.
Right.
Like
Right, exactly.
$1.
Right.
No, I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with the 18% that they're gonna pick up on this.
Honestly, 0%. I don't think there's
It's
a
definitely
chance.
not 0. Like it's like there's a good chance you won't get killed by a bear today, Mike, but it's not 0.
I know. I know. Sticking with the Sharks, Timo Meyer, who's an RFA, $6 million salary, the $10 million qualifying offer is what is a chilling effect on a number of teams. Kev?
50%.
Okay. Russ?
99.9%.
Okay.
72%.
Because, they don't have to give him $10 million.
Right.
They can just not qualify him and let him walk.
No, I mean, they can sign him for less.
Right.
If he agrees to it, but he could also walk too, right?
Well, if he insists on just getting the qualifying offer.
Right.
I'll say 50. I think there's, I think there's enough interest that it'll make them worth their while.
I know they've talked to some teams pretty intensely. That's why I go to 72%.
Okay. This name popped up a couple days ago. Just I heard somebody talking about him. Josh Anderson, Montreal Canadiens, 4 years left at $5.5 million. Apparently, this contract is backloaded, so more money out of pocket. But he is the type of big winger, playoff type performer that other teams might be interested in. Kev?
30%, 40%. 40%, 35.
We'll cut the difference. 35, right down the middle. Russ?
32%.
20%.
I'll say.
I think there's too many other players before him, and there's not going to be enough money left.
That's fair.
Yeah. I'll say 20%. I think there's a chance, but all right. Yeah. Okay. Brock Besser, 2 years left at $6.65 million. I'll go first. I'll say 80%. Ack?
90%.
90%. Russ?
65%.
Okay. Kevin?
So I'll just say 75 because I think they'll try to trade him, but if they're going to lose Horvat, they probably won't want to trade him. So
right.
So they'll have to kind of play that by ear. So I'll say 75.
Okay, the remaining 5 are rentals, but it's a question of salary and whether teams will retain. Matt Dumba, who we mentioned, $6 million salary, UFA at the end of the year. Eck?
10%.
Russ?
0%.
Kev?
0%.
I'll say 5%. I think it's unlikely, but I pull out the possibility that somebody would offer them.
The only reason I say 10% is real quick is because if the benching last night and the thought that maybe
there was something there.
Garen's all about team chemistry. If Dumba's really pissed, maybe.
Okay. Horvat. Ack?
60%.
Russ?
85%.
Kev?
Oh, I'll play prices right and go right in the middle. Go 68.5%.
I'll use a line. I'll
There's
use
a 40% chance they re-sign him.
I'll use a line from the movie Zero Dark 30. I know certainty scares the crap out of you. 100%. I think he's getting traded.
It's the same certainty that you'll wear a gray shirt on the show. Like it's the same thing.
This is sky blue, Russ.
Right.
It's not sky blue.
It is sky blue.
It's not sky blue.
Here's the thing. He's right. That is sky blue in Buffalo.
That's true.
That's a great line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kev,
Sky blue is gray in Buffalo.
That's the best it gets in Buffalo.
I put this one on the list for you, Kev, because he's not a big name, but it's somebody who a playoff team would be very interested in, and that's Oscar Sundqvist for the Red Wings.
Yeah, no, everybody in Detroit thinks he's going to be. He's a really interesting player.
Right.
He can play high tempo.
Right.
He's a bigger guy. He's actually quite skilled for a guy. He's a great passer. Terrific passer. So,
what do you think?
I think there's about a 75 or 80% chance that he'll be traded for a draft pick.
Okay, Russ, I put him in the same category as Barbashev with St. Louis. I think St. Louis is going to trade. If they don't trade O'Reilly, they're going to trade Barbashev. But
yeah, I'm going to go 80% on this one.
There's a 100% chance I would go with whatever Kevin Allen says on this one.
Okay. I'll go 86%. Okay, and finally, and I'll put them together in because they're always together, and that's Kane and Taves. But let's do it. Kane first, then Taves second.
Kane is 95%.
Okay, and Taves?
Taves is 80%.
Russ, Kane?
Kane, 65%.
Is that because of injury?
Yes, because he doesn't look great right now, even though he's getting points. And I'm going to go Taves 90%.
Okay.
I'm right with Russ on this. I'm going 65. Like if you're talking, if there's thoughts out there that you may be shut down for the season, then that's an injury concern you've got to have addressed. Yeah. So I'm going to go 65%, and then I will say Taves at like 70%.
Okay, so you're more into
Yeah.
Just because of the injury, I mean, if he's healthy, like if the doc says he's great, then it'll be higher.
If he's testing out this injury to see if he can play through it, I mean, which might be what's going on right now, then there might be a few but the $10.5 million on both of them is I know Chicago will retain 50% to get a return.
Right. Here's the weird thing: as bad as Taves was last year, like last night in the last couple of games, I think Taves was better than Kane.
I mean, can you imagine Taves as the number 2 center with Colorado?
Yeah, I think he's their plan B.
I do too.
If they can't get Horvat.
I think Edmonton is going to. I mean, Winnipeg is going to go all in on him.
They're going to try for sure. They'd be silly not to.
I mean, they're where they are right now. He's a local guy. They just really want him.
I was saying the same thing, but when you have 1-2, Dubois and Scheifele, I don't know.
Dubois will happily move to the wing. That's
he doesn't want to play center, so yeah.
Too much defensive responsibility.
I would say 50-50 on Kane, and with Taves, based on what he's been saying the last few days, I think it's about 80%. Wow. I didn't say that. I'm not funky.
Wow.
All right, funky.
Hey, at least it gave you 2%. That's something.
All right.
50-1 odds.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, funky. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here again on Monday. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the football.
Will we?